did you find, so it's interesting. So when you had your first kid, you like changed jobs essentially. You like quit one job and then started another one. But did you find at all like how did that go with employers? I'm curious because I'm, you know, I always hear other women, I don't have kids, but I always hear other women saying that like, oh man, you know, it's hard to get the flexibility that I need in order to, you know, take care of the kid and, you know, do things for the kid as well as, you know, as well as be at work. And people don't expect me to like perform as well too. Like people tend to equate like 8 to 5 butt in the seat with, you know, with high performance. And if you can't do that, if you need like a little bit extra flexibility in your schedule or whatever, then it's like, oh, you're not committed. And like they get this attitude that they have to deal with. I'm curious if you experienced any of that, or if, you know, or if the places that you worked for already had kind of robust, you know, maternity policies and things like that.
It's, you know, it's interesting because I would say that I never really had to deal with that much. Like, I don't know if like, I might have mentioned I had kids, I guess, but it wasn't a question that obviously they're legally allowed to ask, or, you know, like,
right.
But with my first job after I had the baby, like I was very clear, like, hey, I need to make sure I can find daycare for my son. Because at that point I hadn't had anything lined up. I wasn't going to start looking for anything unless, you know, like I had to, right?
Yeah.
And they were like, the biggest thing for me was that Brandon was doing his hospital rotations, right?
Right. Yeah.
So 4 times a year, he would be at the hospital pretty much 24/7. And I had to be like, so that was, I'm like, I had to be able to accommodate for my husband's schedule to take care of the kids. Like otherwise I'll be working from home and everything. And I would say with the first one, like they didn't have any issues, I think. It's a long ago. I don't remember them having much issues. But with the second one, when I applied for the job, because I was already working at a job where I was working, you know, pretty low-key hours, it wasn't very stressful. And then, you know, that we had this other opportunity, and I was like, pretty much told them like, hey, I need to be able to work from home. I have kids, and I, you know, and honestly, I think that if it was any other company, I don't think I could survive, because I would literally bring them to, kids would be off school. I bring him home. I bring him to work, and they'd hang out in my office.
Yeah.
And even at the university, when I worked there, like during the days that they have half days or whatever, I'd bring like Brady to work with me, and he would play with the fluidics line and like kind of get a sense of what it was like in the lab, you know?
That's cool.
And yeah, I'd bring the kids with me, and they would hang out in my cubicle, and I'd have to.
Now, was that something that other coworkers were already doing, and like, did you just start doing that? Yeah, you just did it. Didn't ask, just did it. Yeah.
No, because I was like, yeah, I don't remember. Maybe I asked. I can't remember. I just started. I was like, oh, the kids have the day off. I'm going to be working half day. I'm bring them in, and they didn't have any objections to it. So I'm sure that there was some, you know, it's interesting in any company. There is like the engineers, and then there's the manufacturer the plant people, right? And so I'm sure the people on the production floor were like, oh, Bibianna, she gets to bring her kids to school, like while I have to slave away, you know, on the production floor, and my kids, I have to find daycare for them, you know? So yeah. I felt kind of bad, but.
So there's definitely like, you think that there was maybe like, you know, some privilege accorded to you and your status as an engineer versus somebody who is like working on the floor. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And I would say that after that though, after I started bringing my kids, there's some other women who are like accountants or whatever. There was not that many engineers in the group, would bring their kids to work too. Just for, you know, for half a day or whatever, like nothing long.
Yeah.
And they were super quiet, so they just hung out in their little area. Yeah. And
pretty normal, like for me growing up, like I would get off of school, and, you know, for me, I would like get off of the boat, walk to my mom's office and like do homework in her office for a couple of hours until, you know, she was done and it was time to go home.
Yeah.
And like, I know a lot of kids, you know, like that I went to school with, you know, a lot of their parents were like working in retail or owned small like retail shops and things like that. And it was like everybody would go to their parents' workplace for a few hours until it was time to go home. Yeah.
No, that makes sense. I mean, I don't know. I mean, maybe I asked. I can't remember. Maybe I asked. I can't remember. I just started. I was like, oh, the kids have the day off. I'm going to be working half day. I'm bringing them in, and they like they didn't have any objections to it. So I'm sure that there was some, you know, it's interesting in any company. There is like the engineers, and then there's the manufacturer the plant people, right? And so I'm sure the people on the production floor were like, oh, Bibianna, she gets to bring her kids to school, like while I have to slave away, you know, on the production floor, and my kids, I have to find daycare for them, you know? So yeah. yeah, so it would have been really hard for me to do. Oh man, I crossed the stupid beads.
Yeah.
But yeah, it would have been really hard if I couldn't bring them. I mean, I could have made it work. I guess obviously I could always pay for daycare for them to go somewhere else, but I always kind of felt bad. Like, I don't know. I think being a working mom, there's always guilt that you're not doing enough, you're doing too much, and thankfully I had like the boys made friends with a lot of other boys whose mom didn't work. So
yeah.
And so they would like go over to their house and hang out with them while I was working. So I felt less guilt about like doing my own thing. And they really enjoyed having my boys around because then they're like, their boys are playing with other people. And so they don't have to worry about them and like keep them amused, right?
Yeah.
So it worked out. And I think that having the support, at work a little, just not having people get on my case about it and be able to work from home and stuff when the kids were sick definitely made it worthwhile. And as much as things ended on a bad note at my last job, at MST, like they really allowed me to balance work and home really well, especially close to the end.
Nice.
So I'm not gonna have any, regrets about how long I stayed or anything like that, even though I probably stayed a little bit longer than I should have.
Well, as long as there were like good things about it.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Totally.
I learned a lot, so.
Totally.
No,
I'm looking through the direction.
It's pretty much that people are full of shit.
Yeah. A common thing, as it turns out.